Ever wonder how the Amish grow so much food with so little effort? Their gardening secrets have fed families for generations, while many of us struggle with weeds and disappointing harvests. These 30 Amish gardening techniques use simple tools and natural methods that work with nature, not against it. They solve common garden problems while saving you time and money. No fancy equipment or chemicals needed. 3 Sisters. Garden Magic. The Amish utilize the 3 Sisters method, growing corn, beans, and squash together in a mutually beneficial relationship. Corn provides natural poles for beans to climb, beans add nitrogen to the soil feeding the corn, and squash leaves spread out like living mulch, preventing weeds and retaining moisture. This planting style creates its own microclimate, providing partial shade and naturally suppressing weeds. Amish farmers spend about 70% less time weeding these plots compared to conventional beds. For proper implementation, plant corn in clusters of 4 to 5 stalks, spaced 3 to 4 feet apart. When corn reaches 6 inches tall, plant 3 to 4 bean seeds around each cluster. After another week, plant squash seeds between the corn clusters. This timing staggers growth perfectly. Originally developed by Native Americans thousands of years ago, this companion planting method was later adopted by the Amish, who incorporated it into their sustainable farming practices. The 3 Sisters approach typically yields 20% more food from the same space compared to planting these crops separately. Quilt gardening. Amish gardens resemble patchwork quilts rather than straight rows for practical reasons. While straight rows accommodate tractors, quilt layouts better serve hand gardeners. This arrangement features square or rectangular beds with pathways between them, allowing access to plants without stepping on growing areas. By reaching plants from any side, gardeners walk approximately 47% less distance than with conventional rows. It's like the difference between taking the scenic route or the shortcut to the buffet table, and we all know which one gets you to the food faster. Creating this layout requires only string and stakes to mark garden beds. Make beds about 4 feet wide with 2 footpaths between them. Cover pathways with wood chips or straw to prevent weeds. This design also improves water conservation. Undisturbed soil remains loose, absorbing water more efficiently. In contrast, compacted soil from row gardens can reduce water absorption by up to 40%, requiring more frequent watering and causing increased runoff. Most Amish gardeners report needing to water their quilt gardens half as often as conventional row gardens. The Amish weather forecast. The Amish rely on natural signals rather than technology to guide their planting. Woolly caterpillars serve as winter predictors. A wider brown middle section suggests a milder winter, while a narrow band indicates harsh conditions. Moon phases influence planting schedules. Root crops like potatoes and carrots are planted during the waning moon, while above-ground crops like tomatoes grow better when planted during the waxing moon. Research shows germination rates increase by up to 15% when planting aligns with appropriate moon phases. 3 natural signs indicate proper soil planting temperature: oak leaves reaching squirrel's ear size, abundant dandelion blooms, and maple trees releasing sap. When these occur simultaneously, soil has typically reached 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, ideal for most vegetables. These indicators appear in Amish farming almanacs dating back to the early 1800s, demonstrating their reliability through consistent correlation with soil temperature readings. The Amish have tracked these patterns for generations, creating localized climate knowledge that often proves more accurate for specific garden plots than general weather forecasts. Year-round planting calendar. The Amish treat gardening as a year-round task. Winter is key planting time, when families sketch garden maps on graph paper, noting each bed with planting dates and succession plans. Once spring crops are harvested, the same space hosts fall vegetables. Amish gardens never rest, they just switch jobs. Succession planting ensures continuous harvests. Instead of planting all lettuce at once, small batches go in every 2 weeks, keeping fresh veggies on the table all season. Generational formulas guide planting: 15 to 20 tomato plants per person for fresh use and canning, 10 to 15 pole bean plants, and 10 pounds of seed potatoes per person, yielding about 100 pounds. These tried-and-true methods help grow enough food for 9 to 10 months from a garden about half the size of a tennis court. Zone gardening for less work. Have you ever trudged across your entire garden just to snip a sprig of parsley for dinner? The Amish would shake their heads at such inefficiency. Their zone gardening approach groups plants by care requirements, saving countless steps throughout the growing season. Imagine your garden divided into 3 simple zones: daily, weekly, and monthly. The daily zone sits closest to your kitchen door, filled with herbs and vegetables you harvest frequently. When cooking dinner, you're just a few steps from fresh basil or lettuce. Meanwhile, potatoes, winter squash, and other crops that need minimal attention until harvest time occupy the monthly zone furthest from your house. This thoughtful arrangement might seem obvious, but it's remarkable how few gardeners implement it. One elderly Amish woman laughed when she told me about visiting her English, non-Amish, neighbor who planted mint at the far corner of her property, requiring a daily trek across the yard just for tea herbs. 5 minutes spent planting these zones can literally save miles of walking over a growing season. And for the Amish, who value efficiency and practicality, this common sense approach turns garden work from a burden into a pleasure. Trash can lasagna. Composting. Forget pricey tumblers and fussy systems. The Amish lasagna method turns composting into a no-fuss process using a simple plastic trash can with drainage holes. Layer green materials, like kitchen scraps and grass clippings, with brown ones, like dried leaves, newspaper, or cardboard, just like you'd build a lasagna. What sets this apart? No turning required. Unlike traditional composting that demands weekly turning, this method builds enough heat to break everything down on its own. Just keep adding layers on top and scoop out rich compost from the bottom when ready. One Amish gardener shared how they compost coffee grounds, eggshells, even floor dust. "Nothing goes to waste in our homes," she said proudly. After one season, many gardeners stopped buying fertilizer altogether, saving money and boosting soil health naturally. The rabbit manure secret. While many gardeners spend big on fertilizers, the Amish rely on a humble, nearly free alternative: rabbit manure. Unlike cow or chicken droppings that need months to compost, rabbit pellets can be used straight on garden beds without harming plants. A single rabbit hutch placed near the garden can fertilize an entire family's vegetable plot. Amish-built hutches have wire bottoms and trays underneath, making collection easy. Just scatter the pellets around your plants and let rainwater do the rest. The results are impressive. Crops grown with rabbit manure often outperform those treated with store-bought fertilizers. Tomatoes thrive, lettuce gets lush, and plants resist pests more easily. The garden knows the difference between chemicals and what comes from animals, one Amish farmer told me. While others spend hundreds at garden centers, he relies on this simple method to grow show-stopping harvests. Cover crops. To feed soil. When autumn arrives and garden beds empty, most people leave the soil bare until spring. The Amish, however, see this as a missed opportunity to build soil fertility naturally through cover crops, what they often call green manure. Rather than leaving garden beds empty, Amish gardeners immediately plant quick-growing crops like rye, clover, or buckwheat. These plants serve multiple purposes. They prevent erosion, suppress weeds, and add organic matter to the soil. But most importantly, they pull nutrients from deep in the earth and make them available for next season's vegetables. The beauty of this system is its simplicity. Even with imperfect timing, any cover crop improves your soil more than bare ground. And contrary to popular belief, cover crops work wonderfully even in small gardens. You don't need acres of land to benefit from this practice. One Amish farmer I spoke with hasn't purchased fertilizer in 5 years, relying entirely on cover crops to feed his soil. "The plants do the work while I rest," he said with a twinkle in his eye. When spring arrives, he simply turns the cover crops into the soil 2 weeks before planting, allowing all those nutrients to become available right when his vegetables need them most. This natural cycle mimics nature's own system of soil building, something the Amish have understood for generations. Wood ash, garden gold. Winter evenings by the fireplace produce valuable garden fertilizer for Amish families. The ashes contain calcium, potassium, and minerals that vegetables need. Amish families collect fireplace ashes in coffee cans through winter, accumulating enough free calcium-rich fertilizer for their garden by spring. Wood ash often works better than commercial lime for most garden soils, especially acidic ones. Vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, and root crops improve with ash applications, while acid-loving plants like blueberries and potatoes should remain ash-free. One Amish gardener noted, "My tomatoes know the difference between store-bought calcium and what comes from our own hearth. Apply ash lightly around established plants, never directly on seedlings. A light dusting provides enough minerals for the growing season. While neighbors spend on bags of lime, you'll be putting fireplace waste to productive use, as Amish gardeners have done for generations." Weeds that work for you. Amish growers see certain weeds as garden allies. Plants like comfrey, dandelion, and yarrow have deep taproots that bring up minerals from subsoil that vegetables can't reach. The Amish use the cut and drop method, trimming these beneficial weeds at ground level and leaving them as mulch. As they decompose, they release stored nutrients where vegetables need them. These dynamic accumulators contribute more to soil health than many cultivated plants. Comfrey leaves contain higher potassium levels than most commercial fertilizers. These helper plants require no care, growing vigorously without watering or attention. While neighbors pull every dandelion, you'll be cultivating strategic weeds that work harder than many store-bought soil amendments. Clay pot, underground irrigation. The Amish practice an ancient irrigation technique using unglazed clay pots buried in the garden, reducing watering time by up to 70%. Porous clay naturally sweats water through its walls. Buried pots with rims showing above soil deliver moisture directly to plant roots for days. While surface water evaporates quickly, this system ensures nearly every drop reaches plants. Amish gardeners find affordable pots at thrift stores and yard sales. Even crack pots work perfectly. Cracks help distribute water more effectively. They bury different size pots at varying depths depending on plant type. During a recent drought, an Amish community continued harvesting abundant vegetables while neighboring gardens withered, using this ancient method that delivers water exactly where and when plants need it. Mulch secrets for better gardens. The Amish mulching system creates what they call a garden that tends itself, using free materials from their farms: straw, leaves, grass clippings, and sawdust. They wait until soil has completely warmed before applying summer mulch, preventing cold, wet conditions that slow growth. For stubborn perennial weeds, they first lay down newspaper, avoiding glossy pages, then cover with natural mulch. This two-layer approach blocks persistent weeds while allowing water to penetrate. "I used to spend Saturdays weeding," one Amish woman said. "Now I spend them picking flowers." Proper mulching can decrease weeding time by up to 90%. For plants prone to fungal issues, the Amish leave a small circle of bare soil around stems while mulching heavily between rows, a detail many conventional gardeners miss. Catching rainwater in soil. While many gardeners invest in expensive rain barrels, the Amish prefer catching rainwater directly in the soil where plants need it. This approach requires no containers, no complicated downspout systems, and no maintenance, just thoughtful garden design. By observing how water naturally flows across their property during rainfall, Amish gardeners identify opportunities to slow that water down and direct it to growing areas. They create simple swales, shallow ditches with berms on the downhill side that capture rainwater and allow it to soak slowly into the ground rather than running off. The tool most valuable for this work isn't a fancy level or the laser sight, but a simple observation of puddles and natural water flow during rainstorms. "Water tells you where it wants to go," an Amish farmer explained. "We just help it stay where we need it." Properly sized swales make an enormous difference during both wet and dry periods. During heavy rains, they prevent erosion by capturing runoff. During droughts, plants growing near these water-capturing zones remain vibrant while others struggle. One Amish garden I visited remained productive through a month-long dry spell without irrigation, thanks entirely to thoughtfully placed swales that had captured previous rainfall deep in the soil profile. "The rain comes when it wants to," the gardener smiled. "Our job is making sure it stays long enough to help." The dew collection trick. Few gardeners realize that morning dew can provide up to a quarter of their garden's water needs without any effort on their part. The Amish have long understood this natural phenomenon and designed their gardens to maximize dew collection. Morning dew forms when warm air meets cooler surfaces overnight. This moisture briefly clings to leaves and stems before evaporating as the sun rises. Plants with broad, slightly fuzzy leaves naturally collect more dew than others. The Amish deliberately include these dew-catching plants throughout their gardens to increase overall moisture levels. You can easily test if your plants are benefiting from dew by placing your hand under leaves before sunrise. If your hand comes away damp, nature is watering your garden for free. Strategic placement makes a significant difference. Plants in slight depressions or near stone walls collect more dew than those in exposed locations. During water restrictions that prevent regular irrigation, this dew collection trick becomes particularly valuable. One Amish gardener managed to keep his lettuce crop thriving through a dry July using only dew and minimal supplemental watering. "The plants drink from the air when we know how to help them," he explained with a satisfied nod. By thinking beyond the watering can, the Amish tap into nature's own irrigation system that many conventional gardeners completely overlook. Strategic shade, less means more. While most gardening advice emphasizes full sun exposure, the Amish know a counterintuitive truth. For some vegetables, strategic shade actually increases production. This approach seems especially relevant as summer temperatures break records year after year. Lettuce, spinach, and other greens typically bolt, go to seed when days grow long and hot. But Amish gardens continue producing these cool weather crops throughout summer by providing afternoon shade. Tall plants like corn and sunflowers cast shadows that protect heat-sensitive vegetables during the most intense sun hours, while still allowing morning sunshine for photosynthesis. The clever aspect of this system is using deciduous structures that create shade in summer, but not in spring or fall. Pole beans growing on east-west trellises, for example, shade the north side during hot months, but don't block light during cooler seasons when sun is welcome. With this simple adjustment, an Amish gardener can harvest lettuce continuously while neighbors complain that it's too hot to grow greens. "Plants are like people," an Amish farmer told me with a smile. "Some enjoy the heat, and others prefer a bit of shade on hot afternoons." By understanding these preferences and creating microclimates within the garden, the Amish extend growing seasons and increase harvests with no additional water or work, just thoughtful placement. Plant partnerships that repel pests. When insects attack their gardens, the Amish don't reach for spray bottles. Instead, they rely on clever plant combinations that naturally keep pests at bay. These plant partnerships, often called companion planting, create natural protection without chemicals. The science behind companion planting involves plant communications we're only beginning to understand. Some plants release compounds through their roots or leaves that confuse or repel insects hunting for specific crop plants. Others attract beneficial insects that prey on garden pests. By intentionally interplanting these protective species, Amish gardeners create gardens that largely defend themselves. Tomatoes growing alongside basil develop better flavor while experiencing fewer hornworm problems. Carrots thrive when surrounded by onions, which mask their sweet scent from carrot flies. Nasturtiums planted throughout the garden act as trap crops, drawing aphids away from vegetables. One Amish gardener demonstrated a color-coded mapping system that ensures beneficial plant pairs always grow together, creating garden sections that remain remarkably pest-free without spraying. The spacing between companion plants matters tremendously. Too close and they compete for nutrients. Too far apart and they lose their protective benefits. Plants should be close enough to whisper to each other, but not so close they fight over dinner, explained an elderly Amish woman who hadn't used insecticides in over 40 years. Her flourishing garden, buzzing with pollinators but remarkably free of pest damage, provided living proof that these plant partnerships really work. The bug barrier method. The perimeter of an Amish garden often tells more about their pest management approach than what's growing inside. By planting strategic border plants around garden edges, they create what amounts to an invisible fence that many pest insects refuse to cross. Strong-smelling herbs like rosemary, lavender, and thyme create olfactory confusion for many garden pests, masking the scent of vegetables these insects seek. When planted in dense rows around garden borders, these aromatic herbs form a protective barrier that repels pests while simultaneously attracting beneficial pollinators with their flowers. The height and density of these barrier plantings significantly impact their effectiveness. Low borders might deter crawling insects, but do little against flying pests. The Amish typically create varied height borders with shorter herbs in front and taller fragrant plants behind. For gardeners allergic to common herbs, alternatives like scented geraniums, tansy, or certain flowering perennials can provide similar protection. The bugs have to work harder to find our vegetables than we work to keep them out, joked an Amish farmer whose garden showed remarkably little insect damage despite using no chemical controls. Testing in several communities showed the simple border method reduced pest problems by as much as 80% compared to unprotected gardens. As concerns about chemical pesticides grow, this Amish approach offers an elegant alternative that improves rather than damages the garden ecosystem. The chicken cleanup crew. Chickens might be the most underutilized garden tool in America today, but the Amish have long known their value beyond egg production. These feathered workers transform garden maintenance when managed properly with a simple movable pen system, often called a chicken tractor. This lightweight, bottomless enclosure allows chickens access to specific garden areas while keeping them contained. As the birds scratch and peck, they devour weed seeds, insect eggs, and larvae while simultaneously fertilizing the soil. After a week or two in one spot, the pen gets moved to a new location, leaving behind perfectly prepared garden beds ready for planting. The timing of chicken access matters enormously. Amish gardeners allow chickens into growing areas only between crops or during fallow periods, never around actively growing vegetables, which the birds would happily destroy. A fall garden cleanup becomes remarkably simple when chickens handle the work. They'll strip remaining plant material, consume leftover vegetables, and integrate everything into the soil through their constant scratching. "My chickens work cheaper than any hired hand," laughed an Amish farmer who built his chicken tractor from scrap lumber and chicken wire for less than $50. The system proves particularly effective against persistent pests like squash bugs, which lay eggs in soil that chickens eagerly find and eat. While modern gardeners fight endless battles against insect cycles, the Amish enlist chickens as allies, creating a natural partnership that benefits both garden and birds. Fossil dust bug control. When insect problems exceed what companion planting can handle, the Amish turn to a prehistoric solution, diatomaceous earth. This fine white powder consists of fossilized remains of tiny aquatic organisms called diatoms. While harmless to humans and pets, it acts like microscopic razor blades against soft-bodied insects that crawl through it. Unlike chemical pesticides that leave harmful residues, diatomaceous earth works through physical action rather than toxicity. It damages the waxy outer layer of insects' exoskeletons, causing them to dehydrate. The effectiveness against many common garden pests, particularly slugs, which plague most vegetable gardens, makes it a staple in Amish gardening. Application requires no special equipment. Amish gardeners use kitchen flour sifters, salt shakers, or homemade dust applicators fashioned from cotton fabric and twine. They carefully apply the powder to plant foliage and surrounding soil during dry weather, taking care to avoid beneficial insects when possible. One elderly Amish gardener showed me sections of her garden where slug damage had completely disappeared after diatomaceous earth application. "Those slugs were eating everything I planted until I found this dust," she said. "Now they go somewhere else for dinner." For maximum effectiveness, applications need renewal after heavy rain, but even imperfect coverage provides significant protection while maintaining the garden's natural ecosystem better than chemical alternatives. Plant decoys. To save harvest. Sometimes the best garden defense involves strategic sacrifice. The Amish practice of growing decoy plants, also called trap crops, uses certain vegetables specifically to attract pests away from main crops. This clever misdirection protects your harvest without sprays or chemicals. The concept works because most insect pests strongly prefer certain plant varieties over others. Nasturtiums, for example, attract aphids more intensely than most vegetables. By planting these sacrifice crops around garden edges or interspersed with valuable crops, pests concentrate on the trap plants and largely ignore your main harvest. Different pests require different trap crops. Blue Hubbard squash attracts squash bugs and cucumber beetles more effectively than zucchini or yellow summer squash. Early potatoes draw Colorado potato beetles away from main season potato crops. The distance between trap crops and protected vegetables matters tremendously. Too far apart and pests might find your main crops anyway. Too close and they might easily move between plants. We let the bugs have a small feast so we can have a bigger one, explained an Amish farmer whose cucumber harvest remained untouched while nearby trap crops showed considerable insect damage. In community testing, gardens using appropriately placed trap crops showed 80% less damage to main vegetable crops compared to unprotected gardens. The small investment in trap crop seeds saves substantially more in vegetables that would otherwise be lost to pest damage, a trade-off the thrifty Amish consider well worthwhile. The back-saving weed scratcher, the tool making the biggest difference in Amish garden maintenance, might surprise you. It's not a fancy tiller or expensive equipment, but a simple long-handled tool they often call a weed scratcher. This implement allows gardeners to eliminate weeds without the back-breaking bending that makes weeding such dreaded work. Unlike conventional hoes that require substantial force and can damage shallow-rooted crops, the weed scratcher features a thin, sharp blade that glides just below soil surface, slicing weed roots with minimal soil disturbance. Many Amish make these tools themselves using materials already in their workshops, an old rake handle attached to a repurposed piece of thin, flat steel. The technique for using this tool differs significantly from regular hoeing. With a light touch and standing position, gardeners can clear large areas quickly while barely disturbing the soil surface. This gentle approach preserves soil structure and brings fewer weed seeds to the surface where they might germinate. My grandfather could weed 3 rows while standing in one spot, one Amish gardener told me as he demonstrated the tool's reach and efficiency. For older gardeners particularly, this tool extends their gardening years by eliminating the physical strain that often forces people to give up vegetable growing. While fancy ergonomic tools fill garden center shelves with high price tags, this simple Amish solution costs almost nothing yet, delivers remarkable results. One afternoon spent making this tool saves countless hours of backache throughout the growing season. The man-made soil improver. Watching someone struggle with a gas-powered tiller can be quite entertaining. All that noise, fumes, and wrestling with a machine that has a mind of its own. Meanwhile, the Amish gardener quietly works nearby with a wheel cultivator, finishing in half the time with twice the results. Wheel cultivators might look old-fashioned, but they're actually superior to modern power equipment for most garden beds. These human-powered tools create the perfect soil texture without compacting the ground or destroying beneficial soil life. The secret is in the design. The curved tines slice through soil at just the right angle to break it up without turning it over completely. What makes these tools so effective is proper technique. Push slowly and deliberately, allowing the wheel to do the work. Keep the handles at waist height and let your body weight provide the downward pressure. For clay soil, make 2 passes in perpendicular directions to create a crumbly texture perfect for planting. These cultivators require almost no maintenance compared to gas-powered equipment. A little oil on the moving parts and occasional sharpening of the tines is all that's needed. Many Amish families have wheel cultivators that have been in continuous use for 3 generations. You don't need to pay full price for a new one either. Check farm auctions, estate sales, and even antique stores. An old cultivator with some rust will often work better than a flimsy new one from the big box store. One Amish farmer noted that his garden preparation time dropped from 8 hours with hand tools to just 2 hours when he started using a wheel cultivator. Your back will thank you too. Height harvest baskets. Backaches from bending over to harvest vegetables can turn garden joy into a painful chore. The Amish solved this problem long ago with a clever setup that brings the harvest container to a comfortable working height. This approach uses ordinary baskets or buckets mounted on simple wooden stands. The containers sit at about waist height, allowing you to drop harvested vegetables directly into them without stooping. When harvesting low crops like beans or strawberries, this height difference saves hundreds of backbends during a single picking session. Creating these stands takes just minutes. Use 2 wooden boards in an X shape for stability, with a circular opening at the top that holds your basket securely. Some Amish gardeners add a simple strap that goes around their waist, connecting to the basket stand. This keeps the container following along as they work down the row. Strategic placement makes these baskets even more efficient. Position stands at the ends of rows and at intervals of about 15 feet throughout larger garden areas. This cuts walking time in half compared to making repeated trips to a single collection point. For heavier crops like tomatoes or apples, use smaller containers to prevent them from becoming too heavy to move easily. The design can be customized for different vegetables. Wider, shallow baskets work well for delicate items like raspberry and strawberries, preventing crushing. Deeper buckets are perfect for beans, peas, and root vegetables. Some gardeners add padding to the basket rim to prevent damage to tender produce. One elderly Amish woman claims the simple change allowed her to continue gardening well into her 80s. Gardening should feed the soul, not break the back, she says. With this small adjustment, harvesting becomes a pleasure rather than a pain, turning one of gardening's most physically demanding tasks into an enjoyable activity. String trellising. The tangled mess of vines and metal tomato cages at season's end is enough to make any gardener dread the fall cleanup. Here's where the Amish approach to trellising shines, using nothing but string and wooden stakes to create supports that work better than commercial options while saving both money and frustration. The key is in the setup and the special knots used. Start with sturdy stakes, locust or cedar if you have them, driven at least 18 inches into the ground. Then create your string grid using the slip loop method where each connection can be undone with a single pull at the end of the season. This system adapts to whatever you're growing. For beans, run vertical strings. For cucumbers, create a diagonal grid pattern. For heavy tomatoes, double or triple the strings in key support areas. The real advantage comes at harvest time. You can reach through the string grid from any angle to pick vegetables hiding inside the foliage. When the growing season ends, simply pull the master string and the entire setup collapses for easy removal. No more wrestling with frozen metal cages or cutting vines free from permanent trellises. Plus, string trellising costs about 1/10 what you'd spend on commercial supports. String trellises also allow for better air circulation around your plants, reducing fungal problems that plague gardens with rigid metal supports. As Sarah, an Amish gardener from Lancaster County, says, metal cages are for people who enjoy untangling Christmas lights. String is for those who want to grow vegetables. The garden fork. Your most valuable garden tool might be one you've never heard of. The broad fork, sometimes called a grelinette, is the secret weapon of Amish gardeners who need to work soil deeply without the damage caused by rototilling. Unlike conventional garden forks, a broad fork has 2 handles attached to a wide bar with tines about 10 to 14 inches long. The design lets you use your body weight instead of arm strength to penetrate deeply into the soil. Step onto the crossbar, rock backward pulling the handles toward you, then step off and move backward about 6 inches. Each movement creates a section of deeply loosened soil without turning it over. This preservation of soil layers is critical. Beneficial fungi, worms, and soil microbes live at specific depths. Rototilling destroys these natural layers, but broad forking maintains them while creating channels for air, water, and plant roots to penetrate deeply. The physical benefits are equally impressive. Working with a broad fork engages your strongest muscles, legs, and core, rather than straining your back. It's excellent exercise that's actually enjoyable rather than exhausting. Many older Amish gardeners in their 70s and 80s still use broad forks regularly. The results speak for themselves. Gardens prepared with broad forks typically show stronger root development and better drought resistance. Plants can send roots down 24 inches or more into loosened soil, accessing minerals and moisture unavailable in shallowly tilled gardens. While quality broad forks aren't cheap, they're virtually indestructible. With basic care, a good broad fork will last several lifetimes, making it not just a tool, but an heirloom to pass down through generations of gardeners. Choosing plants like a pro. The bright seed catalogs that arrive each January show perfect vegetables that rarely match what actually grows. Amish gardeners take a different approach, focusing on selecting the best plants from their own gardens for seed saving. This practice, refined over generations, creates vegetables perfectly adapted to local conditions. The selection process starts long before harvest. Throughout the growing season, observe your plants carefully and mark the standouts with colored twine. Look for the earliest producers, the most vigorous growers, and those that show natural resistance to local pests and diseases. Timing matters enormously when collecting seeds. Don't wait until the end of the season when only the stragglers remain. Select from plants at their peak production when they're showing their strongest characteristics. For tomatoes, this means the second or third flush of fruits, not the first or last. Visual cues help identify superior plants. Leaves with a slightly bluish cast often indicate natural disease resistance. Plants with thicker stems usually tolerate drought better. For leafy greens, look for plants that are slow to bolt when the weather turns hot. The improvement in your garden happens surprisingly quickly. After just 3 years of careful seed selection, many vegetables will show noticeable enhancements in flavor, productivity, and hardiness. Start with easy seed-saving crops like beans, peas, tomatoes, and lettuce. This approach isn't just economical, it connects you to the natural cycles of your garden in a profound way. As one Amish farmer puts it, when you save seeds, you're not just growing this year's food, you're growing next year's garden. Your vegetables adapt to your specific soil, climate, and growing methods, becoming true natives of your particular place. The fermentation method. Seeds from the grocery store tomato rarely grow well, but those same seeds can become garden champions with one simple technique. Fermentation might sound complicated, but it's actually nature's way of preparing tomato seeds for better germination. The gel coating around tomato seeds contains chemicals that inhibit sprouting. In nature, fallen tomatoes ferment on the ground, dissolving this coating and preparing seeds to grow when conditions are right. You can replicate this process at home with remarkable results. Scoop the seeds and gel from ripe tomatoes into a small jar with a bit of water. Let this mixture sit at room temperature for exactly 3 days in summer or 4 days in cooler weather. A thin white film will form on top. This is normal and shows fermentation is working. The mixture will smell sour but not putrid. After fermentation completes, add more water to the jar and stir well. The good seeds sink to the bottom while the immature ones float. Pour off the liquid, pulp, and floating seeds. Then rinse the good seeds thoroughly. Spread them on a paper plate or coffee filter to dry completely before storing. This simple process increases germination rates by about 35% compared to seeds that weren't fermented. The fermentation also kills many seed-borne diseases that might otherwise persist in your garden. Seeds prepared this way often sprout faster and produce stronger seedlings. You can test this yourself by planting half your tomato seeds with fermentation and half without. The difference becomes obvious within days of sprouting. The fermented seeds emerge more uniformly and grow more vigorously from the start. While this method works best for tomatoes, it can also improve eggplant and cucumber seeds. Just adjust the fermentation time to 2 days for cucumbers as they decompose more quickly. Your garden will thank you for the extra effort. Storage solutions to keep seeds fresh. Finding your carefully saved seeds sprouted, moldy, or dead in storage is heartbreaking. Amish gardeners avoid this disappointment with simple storage methods that keep seeds viable for years using common household items. The first rule of seed storage is knowing which containers work best for different types of seeds. Paper envelopes work well for large, dry seeds like beans and corn, while small glass jars with tight lids protect tiny seeds like lettuce and carrots. The Amish often repurpose medicine bottles, baby food jars, and spice containers for seed storage. Moisture is the great enemy of stored seeds. An ingenious Amish trick involves placing a tablespoon of powdered milk wrapped in tissue paper inside each storage container. This acts as a desiccant, absorbing any moisture that might get trapped inside. Replace it every 6 months for continued protection. Organization prevents waste and confusion. Label everything clearly with the plant name, variety, and collection date. Group seeds by planting time in small boxes, then store these boxes in a cool, dark place. A basement shelf or the butter compartment of your refrigerator works perfectly. Before planting time, test older seeds by placing 10 samples between damp paper towels for a few days. If fewer than 6 sprout, you'll need to sow more thickly or obtain fresh seeds. This simple test can save you from a disappointing growing season. With proper storage, many vegetable seeds remain viable for years. Tomato seeds can last 5 years, beans and peas 3 to 4 years, and squash seeds up to 6 years. One Amish gardener in Ohio maintains a seed collection with some varieties that have been grown continuously by her family since they arrived from Switzerland in 1842. Multiply your perennials. Garden centers charge premium prices for perennial plants, but Amish gardeners rarely buy what they can multiply themselves. Root division turns one plant into many, creating an abundant garden without spending extra money. The technique works for most perennial vegetables, herbs, and flowers. Early spring or early fall provides the best timing for most divisions. Look for plants that have formed clumps or are starting to produce less vigorously. These are telling you they're ready to be divided. Carefully dig up the entire plant, preserving as much of the root system as possible. For fibrous-rooted plants like hostas or daylilies, use 2 garden forks back-to-back to gently pry the clump apart. For plants with rhizomes like iris or canna lilies, cut the thick root-like structures into sections, ensuring each piece has at least one growth point. Plants with multiple stems growing from a crown, like rhubarb or asparagus, can be cut apart with a sharp knife, giving each section several buds and a portion of roots. Quick replanting is crucial for success. Have new planting holes prepared before you begin dividing and keep the roots moist during the process. Water the newly transplanted divisions thoroughly and provide some shade for the first few days. Not every perennial responds well to division. Butterfly weed, baptisia, and balloon flower have deep tap roots that resent disturbance. Plants like lavender and sage with woody stems should be propagated by cuttings instead. The multiplication potential is impressive. One clump of chives can become 6 new plants. A single rhubarb crown might yield 3 or 4 divisions. A mature asparagus plant can produce enough divisions to start a new 20-foot row. With this technique, you can fill your garden with valuable perennials while sharing extras with neighbors and friends. Simple cutting propagation. Walking through an Amish garden in early spring, you might notice small bundles of branches stuck directly into the soil. These aren't failed attempts at rustic decoration. They're cuttings that will grow into new fruit bushes, flowering shrubs, and herbs without costing a penny. Dormant hardwood cuttings, taken while plants are sleeping in winter, offer the easiest propagation method for beginners. Select healthy branches from last year's growth that are about pencil thickness. Cut them into 6 to 8 inch sections, making sure each piece has at least 3 to 4 buds along its length. The cut at the bottom should be straight across, just below a bud, while the top cut should be angled about 1/2 inch above a bud. No need for expensive rooting hormones. Instead, soak the bottom ends in willow water, made by steeping willow twigs in room temperature water for 24 hours. Willow contains natural rooting compounds that work just as effectively as commercial products. Plant the cuttings with about half their length in the soil, making sure the buds point upward. Space them about 6 inches apart in a sheltered location with dappled shade. Keep the soil consistently moist for the first month, and by summer's end, many will have developed good root systems. This method works amazingly well for currants, gooseberries, elderberries, and grapes. It's also effective for many ornamental shrubs like forsythia, hydrangea, and spirea. Success rates vary from 60 to 90% depending on the plant type and care. One particularly resourceful Amish gardener started with 3 raspberry canes given by a neighbor and within 3 years had developed a 50-foot hedge producing gallons of berries annually. Her secret was taking dormant cuttings each winter from the strongest new canes, creating an ever-improving berry patch tailored to her specific growing conditions.